Welcome to Barbecue Stories channel. Please like this video and subscribe. We're grateful for each and every one of you sharing your relation tales. Let us know where in the world you're tuning in from. We'd love to hear from you in the comments. Let's begin. The sound of keys jangling in the front door resonated through the quiet house. Alex Bishop, seated at the dining table, didn't bother looking up from his dinner. It was Jenna's usual time to get home, and he'd long since grown accustomed to her late evenings. But tonight, something was different. She stepped into the kitchen, her heels clicking softly against the tiled floor. Her purse hung loosely from her shoulder, and her face carried a weight Alex had never seen before. She stopped just short of the table, her gaze avoiding his. "Alex," she said quietly, her voice barely audible. The way she said his name, the pause that followed, it was enough to send a chill down his spine. He set his fork down, suddenly losing his appetite. "What is it?" he asked, his tone light but guarded. Jenna hesitated, taking a deep breath as if summoning courage. Finally, she met his eyes, and the words tumbled out. "We need to talk." Alex's stomach tightened. "Okay," he said slowly. "Talk about what?" She lowered her gaze again, her fingers nervously twisting the strap of her purse. "I've made a decision," she said. "This Friday, I'm going on a date." For a moment, Alex thought he'd misheard her. "A date?" he repeated, his voice laced with disbelief. Jenna nodded. "With someone from work." The room seemed to tilt. Alex gripped the edge of the table, his heart pounding in his chest. "You're serious?" "I am." Jenna's voice was calm, but her hands betrayed her, trembling as she placed her purse on the counter. "It's something I need to do." "Need to do?" Alex's voice rose, the anger bubbling just beneath the surface. "You're married, Jenna. To me. What the hell is this about?" Jenna sighed, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "It's not about us," she said softly. "It's about me. I've been feeling trapped. I need to explore who I am, what I want." Alex stared at her, the weight of her words sinking in. The woman he had loved, the woman he had trusted, was standing before him, calmly unraveling their life together. "And what about me?" he asked, his voice now cold. "Where does that leave us?" Jenna didn't answer immediately. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I hope you'll understand." Alex scoffed, pushing back his chair as he stood. "Understand? You want me to sit here and be okay with you running off to, what? Test the waters with someone else?" Jenna's face crumpled slightly, but she held her ground. "I'm not asking for your permission, Alex," she said. "I'm asking for your understanding." That night, Alex lay awake, staring at the ceiling as Jenna slept beside him. Her breathing was steady, peaceful, as if she hadn't just shattered the foundation of their marriage. His mind raced, replaying the conversation over and over. By morning, the seed of doubt had grown into something more. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that Jenna wasn't telling him the whole truth. When she left for work, he waited only a few minutes before reaching for her phone. His hands trembled as he scrolled through her messages. It didn't take long to find what he was looking for. Mark Donovan. The name was repeated over and over in a thread of texts, each one more damning than the last. Mark Donovan, a coworker, she'd said. But the messages revealed far more: late-night exchanges, inside jokes, even plans for their upcoming date. Alex's blood boiled as he read the casual intimacy between them. The betrayal was worse than he'd imagined. He slammed the phone down, breathing heavily. This wasn't just a moment of doubt or a passing phase. Jenna had been cultivating this relationship behind his back, and now she was ready to act on it. Alex clenched his jaw. Fine, he thought. If Jenna wanted freedom, she could have it. But not without consequences. The next few days were excruciating. Jenna continued her routine as if nothing had changed, while Alex seated beneath the surface. He watched her closely, noting every detail, the way she smiled at her phone, the faint scent of a new perfume. On the night of her date, Alex waited until she had left before setting his plan into motion. He drove to the restaurant Jenna had mentioned in one of her texts with Mark, parking a discreet distance away. He waited, his heart pounding. When they arrived, Alex watched from the shadows as Jenna laughed and leaned into Mark's touch. The sight was like a knife to his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. This was only the beginning. The next morning, Jenna moved around the house with a forced cheerfulness, as if nothing had happened. Alex played along, hiding the storm brewing within him. His outward demeanor remained calm, almost indifferent, but inside, every moment he spent with her fueled his desire for retribution. He waited patiently. Revenge, after all, was best served cold. One evening, as they sat in the living room, Alex decided to take the first official step in his plan. "If we're going to try to make this work," he began, his voice steady but firm, "there need to be rules." Jenna looked up from her book, her expression cautious. "Rules?" "Yes," Alex said. "You've broken my trust, Jenna. If you want to rebuild it, there have to be boundaries." She hesitated, then nodded. "Okay, what do you have in mind?" "First," Alex said, leaning forward, "you'll tell me everywhere you go. No more secrets. If you're running late, I expect a call. If you're meeting someone, I need to know who it is." Jenna's eyes widened slightly, but she nodded. "That's fair." "Second," Alex continued, "I want access to your phone. No more private conversations." Her hands tightened around the book, but she agreed, her voice soft. "All right." "And third," Alex said, his gaze piercing, "you'll prioritize this marriage above everything else. No more excuses, no more distractions." Jenna swallowed hard. "I understand." At first, the new rules seemed simple enough. Jenna complied with every request, eager to prove her commitment. But Alex was far from finished. His demands became more invasive, more controlling, under the guise of rebuilding trust. He'd ask her to recount her day in excruciating detail, questioning her on every minor inconsistency. If she hesitated or stumbled, he'd raise an eyebrow, his silence heavy with accusation. He began monitoring her social media, commenting on the smallest interactions. "You liked Mark's post today," he said one evening, his voice casual but loaded with meaning. Jenna blinked, caught off guard. "It was just a photo from his trip." "I didn't think." "That's the problem," Alex interrupted. "You don't think." The tension in the room was suffocating. Jenna lowered her gaze, murmuring an apology. Alex watched her, feeling a twisted sense of satisfaction. She was starting to crack. Jenna's once vibrant personality began to fade. The carefree laughter that had once filled their home was replaced by a quiet, almost timid presence. She moved carefully, as if walking on eggshells, afraid of triggering another round of Alex's probing questions. Meanwhile, Alex maintained the facade of a man committed to repairing their marriage. To the outside world, they appeared as a couple working through their issues. But behind closed doors, Alex's control intensified, and Jenna's spirit waned. Despite his growing dominance, Alex found himself grappling with conflicting emotions. The revenge he had meticulously planned brought moments of satisfaction, but it also deepened the void within him. Each time Jenna obeyed his commands without question, he felt a pang of hollow victory. As weeks turned into months, Alex pushed further. He began testing Jenna's loyalty in more elaborate ways. One evening, he asked her to cancel plans with a friend at the last minute, claiming he needed her at home. When she complied without protest, he escalated his demands. "Quit your job," he said one night over dinner, his tone casual. Jenna froze, her fork halfway to her mouth. "What?" "You heard me," Alex said. "You don't need to work. Focus on us instead." Jenna stared at him, her expression a mix of shock and confusion. "Alex, my job is important to me. And so is this marriage. If you're serious about fixing things, you'll do whatever it takes," Alex replied coolly. Tears welled up in her eyes, but she nodded. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll do it." Jenna handed in her resignation the next day. The act was symbolic, a final surrender to Alex's authority. But even as she tried to convince herself that she was doing the right thing, her sense of identity continued to erode. Alex, meanwhile, observed her descent with a mixture of satisfaction and unease. He had succeeded in breaking her spirit, but at what cost? The woman sitting across from him at dinner was a shadow of the vibrant, confident person he had once loved. One evening, as they sat in silence, Jenna finally spoke. "Alex," she said, her voice trembling. "I don't know who I am anymore." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "You're my wife," he said simply. The turning point came one night when Jenna found an old photo of them during happier times. She stared at it for a long moment before turning to Alex, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice breaking. "I've lost myself, and I don't know how to find my way back." Alex's heart clenched. For the first time in months, he saw a glimmer of the woman he had fallen in love with, the woman who had once been his equal. He took a deep breath, the weight of his actions finally crashing down on him. "Maybe it's time we both let go," he said softly. Jenna nodded, her tears falling freely. "Maybe it is." The house was quiet that night. Alex sat alone in the living room, the weight of his own words settling in. "Maybe it's time we both let go." It felt final, yet hollow. Jenna had gone to bed without a word, her shoulders slumped in defeat. For months, Alex had orchestrated her downfall, each action calculated to strip her of independence, confidence, and agency. And now, he wasn't sure what victory felt like anymore. The next morning, Jenna moved with a quiet determination Alex hadn't seen in weeks. She didn't mention their conversation, but her actions spoke volumes. She began packing small items, photo frames, books, pieces of clothing, subtly yet methodically. Alex noticed but said nothing. Instead, he observed, waiting for her to make the first move. By the third day, Jenna finally spoke. "I think I should stay with my sister for a while," she said cautiously, her voice soft but steady. Alex nodded, masking the turmoil inside. "If that's what you need." Jenna left that evening, carrying only a small suitcase. She paused at the door, glancing back at Alex. "Thank you for understanding," she said. Alex simply nodded, watching her go. As the door closed behind her, the house fell into an eerie silence. For the first time in years, Alex was truly alone. He stared at the empty space where Jenna had stood, a wave of conflicting emotions washing over him, relief, sadness, regret. But beneath it all, a sense of unfinished business. In the days that followed, Alex tried to return to his routine, but the quiet house felt oppressive. Every corner reminded him of Jenna, her laughter, her presence, even the arguments that once echoed through the walls. He thought back to their early years together, the love that had once been so pure and unbreakable. How had it come to this? He sat at his desk late one night, scrolling through old photos on his laptop. Each image was a painful reminder of what they had lost. His heart ached as he lingered on a photo of them at the beach, their smiles genuine, their eyes filled with love. Weeks passed, and Alex hadn't heard from Jenna since she left. Part of him wondered if she'd ever come back. But one evening, as he sat grading papers, there was a knock at the door. He opened it to find Jenna standing there, her face pale but determined. "Can we talk?" she asked. Alex stepped aside, letting her in. She looked around the house as if seeing it for the first time in years. "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she said, her voice steady. "About us, about what went wrong." Alex folded his arms, leaning against the wall. Jenna met his gaze, her eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and resolve. I know I hurt you, Alex. I made mistakes, and I can't take them back. But I also know that what we've been doing, this cycle of control and revenge, it's killing us both. Alex felt a lump form in his throat. So, what do you want? I want to move on, Jenna said. Not just from the past, but from this, from us. Alex nodded slowly. Maybe you're right. Maybe it's time we both stop pretending this can be fixed. Jenna's eyes glistened with tears, but she smiled faintly. Thank you, Alex, for being honest. They sat down together, discussing the logistics of their separation. It was the most civil conversation they'd had in months, and for the first time, Alex felt a sense of closure beginning to form. Jenna officially moved out 2 weeks later. The day she left, Alex stood at the doorway, watching as she loaded the last of her belongings into her car. I hope you find what you're looking for, he said quietly. Jenna looked back at him, her expression soft. I hope you do too, Alex. As she drove away, Alex felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. The chapter of their shared life was closing, but for the first time, he felt ready to face whatever came next. Over the following months, Alex focused on rebuilding his life. He threw himself into his work, reconnected with old friends, and even started attending therapy. The sessions forced him to confront his own actions, the pain Jenna had caused, but also the lengths he went to in seeking revenge. He began to understand that his need for control had been a way to cope with his feelings of betrayal. But in the process, he had lost sight of who he was and what he truly wanted. One afternoon, Alex received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Jenna. He hesitated before opening it, unsure of what to expect. The letter was brief but heartfelt. Jenna apologized for the pain she had caused and thanked him for the years they had shared. She wished him happiness and hoped they could both find peace. For the first time in months, Alex felt a sense of calm. He folded the letter carefully, placing it in a drawer. It was the closure he hadn't realized he needed. The story concludes with Alex standing on the edge of a new chapter in his life. He reflects on the lessons he's learned, the destructive power of revenge, the importance of forgiveness, and the value of self-discovery. Though the scars of his past remain, Alex is ready to move forward, stronger and wiser than before.